Chau, I really wanted to hear what because you didn't get a chance to talk about the Hidalgo thing. I mean, I know we kind of talked about it in the commercial break, but I was really interested in hearing what you had to say about that.
Well, I just, look, I don't think from a woman's perspective, you can appreciate how scary it can be when a man's voice talks to you or at you. There is some unconscious, there's some fear there, right? Conscious or otherwise. And I don't think it's appropriate. I think if we try to justify, well, this is what happened, it's okay. It's never okay. I mean, that's the kind of behavior that I find unacceptable, especially in a public domain.
Chau, I don't know if I agree with that.
I know.
As a son of a mother, as a husband, as a father of 2 daughters, if my daughters, I don't want to be drastic, but as a kid, I was taught, hey, you don't hit a girl, right? But in the 3rd grade, a girl hit me, and what was I supposed to do, right? So
you didn't hit her back, but
well, no, but it was humiliating that this girl hit me and I couldn't do anything about it. And I think
the behavior both ways.
So let me bring it up. Let me bring it up a notch. If I struggle with this idea of women and they're calling for their particular place in society, but when that place includes a man telling you that he's offended by you calling him a liar, and he does it in his manly voice, I don't think that
I don't think that was a manly. I think he raised his voice.
No, he didn't raise his voice.
No,
I'm going to say he did. I am going to say that he raised his voice.
Who's our guest?
And I am going to say that if he raised his voice that way to a man, then he has the ability to raise his voice that way to anyone else.
Hey, stop it right there, everybody. First of all, I want to welcome everybody to Overtime. And also welcome Holly Hansen, a very, very accomplished reporter with the Texan. She watched our conversation. We wanted to bring her in and get her added perspective. Marcus, I did cut you off there, but I'm going to ask Holly, you heard that debate and you've been doing some reporting on this. What's your take on this?
Well, I did think that perhaps Commissioner Cagle did raise his voice a little bit. However, Lina Hidalgo has been adamant for a women's place in politics, and she's out there willing to duke it out with others. And so, she's gonna face some criticism. And she did essentially call Commissioner Cagle a liar. And as he said, he took umbrage at that. And I think most of us would. Most of us would respond in a passionate way in most cases. We try to keep our cool. But I would also argue that, Lina Hidalgo seemed to be pretty upset herself. I had some people texting me during that exchange asking me if she was about to cry, which we'd hate to see that, but this is a heated battle and there's some important issues on the table.
Let's talk about those important issues. I mean, the essential issue there was whether this was a one-woman firm bidding for an $11 million contract, that the financial requirements of a contract of this size were waived without explanation. Holly, what's your take on what you've seen? Is there a there there?
Yes, I think there is a there, and I think that the emotional reaction we saw this week at Commissioner's Court reveals that they've been hearing a lot of feedback on this issue, not just from Republicans or conservatives. We've heard some feedback from some folks on the other side of the aisle. There was a lot of eyebrows raised, if you will, about this particular contract, the conditions under which it was undertaken, and what's going to happen next. I think one thing that a lot of people have missed, who did not actually watch this, was Commissioner Cagle talking about, or he kept referring to the county administrator as the, quote, supreme bureaucrat. It's a little bit amusing, but he is making a point there. And his point is that now we've sort of shielded our elected officials on the Commissioner's Court with this layer of bureaucracy. And his questions, and the reason he kept bringing up the fact that this is a one-woman operation, this elevated strategies, is that that person is going to have to hire or subcontract And what Cagle was asking is, will the commissioners have some input? Will they have some oversight? Or will the, quote, supreme bureaucrat, the county administrator, have total oversight on this and not allow them to have that kind of input? As we know, that contractor was selected with just representatives from the county judge's office and the public health department. No one else was involved in that decision.
Hicks was in.
And is this county administrator the same one that they put in the 9th hour under the cloak of darkness? Is that what we're talking about? The one that Democrats have no problem, had absolutely no problem with the official oppression that was taking place in Harris County? Come on, guys. We got to call it like it is on both sides. Hey, I want to make sure. I'm sorry. I don't want to be, I don't want to, but I want to make sure that I was clear, and I don't want to be misunderstood for fear of being misunderstood about what we were saying before. I just want to make sure that I'm clear. I think in an arena, if you are going to dish it out, then you have to be able to take it, and you can't cry foul if you don't like how someone else gave it back to you. If this commissioner were, and I don't doubt that I watched it. I thought, and this made me think about the judge and the prosecutor. I don't know if you've seen this on YouTube. The judge, hey, look at the cutie. The judge and the prosecutor who were arguing with each other.
Get on the other side,
and they actually left.
Over here.
The judge invited him to come
Gotta get over here.
behind the chambers, and they went out and fought fisticuffs. I don't know if you guys seen that, right?
There you go. There you go. Get up. There you go. There you go.
Okay, let's go around the horn here. Tony, you had hi and welcome to Overtime, young ladies.
Hey, welcome.
Say hello, wave.
Morning.
Tony, go ahead.
So I have two main beefs with this. One, well, if this is just a boring issue about policy line items, then go through it, make a policy, follow it. Judge Hidalgo has made it a point to be transparent. So, take her to task on that. If that's where that's at, that's pretty mundane and logical that you can walk through. And if there's something corrupt going on, point it out, because I'd like to see it. But that's not what happened at the Judge Commissioner's Court. I know Judge Cagle, he's smarter than, a typical average politician, because he reads, he understands rhetorical strategies. He chose to deliberately modulate his voice that way, and I've only seen that happen
because he was offended,
Hidalgo, because I think it's because she's a woman, she's Latina, and she's young, and that started from day one.
Are you saying that if a man had called him a liar, Tony, are you saying that if a man had called him a liar, he would have gotten upset?
She doesn't need me to defend herself. What I'm saying is she handles herself fine. I like fighting. She's good at it.
You can't defend
Tony, what I'm asking is, Tony, what I'm asking is, do you believe that if another commissioner, one of the male commissioners, had said that to him, that he would not have reacted?
Yes, I do. I haven't seen him act like that with Emmett. When Emmett was in charge.
I don't know if Emmett ever called him a liar.
Did you see Emmett call him a liar? Did you see Emmett call him a liar?
You're telling me a grown man, you're justifying a grown man losing his mind.
Come on, Tommy.
You're attacking his character.
Maybe you guys didn't hear the
elected
example that I gave before.
Let me just say one last thing. Let me just say one last thing about this, and I'll stop. I'm not saying to censor him. I like that he acted the way his heart leads him, because I want to see how folks act when their heart's being revealed. So I want to see how he's going to talk to Latinas across the board. Mis hermanas, mis primas. I'm not telling him not to do it. I want to see how he's really going to act behind the scenes.
I don't know why you're making this racial, Tony, but I
mean, everything's racial.
Because the Republicans have, Greg, the Republicans have from day one. The little Dora dolls. That's discriminatory. Saying that this is not Mexico when she was speaking Spanish, this is discriminatory. If that were removed from the table, this would be a different discussion. I feel that has not been removed from the table, Greg. That's my personal.
Were those Commissioner Cagle's words?
No.
Charles, you watch County Commissioner's Court regularly. I want to get your take.
Listen, I don't know why we keep bringing up with this commissioner who I think was in Liberty County or wherever he was, said during the last storm when Lina Hidalgo made did the press conference in Spanish. That is very
no expiration date on discrimination.
He's not here. It has nothing to do with what we're like. He's not here. He's not elected in Harris County. It has nothing to do with this. And so I don't know why we keep bringing that up. The reason Cagle was so frustrated is because you are calling his integrity into question. He is an elected official. He is a former judge. If you go and call Turner a liar, see how he reacts. Like, I mean, you do not, I mean, unless someone is flat out lying, which he was not, because he pulled up his computer, showed the website. You go on LinkedIn and you look at Elevate Strategies. It says their employees is 0 to 1 in the range that you could select. On the website, it said she was the only employee of the thing. I mean, it's very clear that it was true. And so for her to call him a liar over something that he can prove right then and there in court, of course he's going to respond the way he did. And it has nothing to do with her being Hispanic, with her being a woman. If it was anyone, I mean, if it was Emmett who did it, he probably would have responded worse because it was a man. He probably tamping down his response a bit.
If Charles calls me a liar right now, I'm going to invite him outside to the back door. I'm telling
you.
This
is a show. As he should.
Make no mistake about it.
Holly,
I do have a question.
I want to give Chau
a question for Holly.
Okay, all right. In spite of the politics, I'm just going to take that very steadfast and firm stance. That's not how you speak to each other. If you notice, Lena almost whispered. She whispered.
That's because she was so upset.
Hold on.
Greg, can I comment?
Yeah, go ahead, Gary.
Can I get a word in edgewise here? All right, look.
Wait, I don't think
here's what happened. You know what we're not talking about is why are we spending $11 million with a group that can't do it? That is the scandal. That's the scam. You know, I just calculated. We could raise, let me finish, please. Can I finish? We could pay $1,000 to 11,000 people who got a shot if we wanted to waste some money to encourage people to get shots. 11,000 could get $1,000 each. That's how much money we're giving to this lady who has no experience. And by the way, I guarantee you we're not going to get any significant numbers or performance out of this. And I suspect, and I think Charles probably agrees with me, that this is really sophisticated money laundering by Lena to get money to other people.
Okay, I want to go to Holly because
Holly, have you been able to find anything out about?
We're having to cover this situation, so we will be following the money. Commissioner Cagle asked for the subcontractors. Lena said she's got 56 people working for her. Well, we know that they are probably subcontractors. I think it is clearly within Commissioner Cagle's rights to ask who those subcontractors are and whether they have a political leaning, whether there is any truth to the allegation that this is a political pass-through. Holly, thoughts?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that having watched the Commissioner's Court for the past 2 years, there have been some other heated exchanges, not just between Cagle and Hidalgo, but some of the other members of the court. There have been raised voices in the past. There's been some hostile exchanges between Cagle and Rodney Ellis, and of course, Tom Ramsey and some of the others as well. So, you know, that I think it's unfair to say that Cagle was only going after Hidalgo because she was female. So first of all, there's that. Second of all, again, you know, we need to know who these people are that this woman is hiring. And I think I mean, come on. The woman that we hired, Elevate Strategies, she worked for the Democrat National Committee. She worked for the Hillary Clinton campaign, and she worked for Adrian Garcia. I mean, you can't say that this is a neutral appointment, that she's going to have a neutral approach. And again, what is she doing? What are we spending $11 million to do? We're already incentivizing vaccines. The vaccination rate is climbing. You know, we do see progress. It's great to, you know, try to encourage people to get vaccinated, but what is actually going on? And Fort Bend County also hired someone to do the same kind of outreach at a fraction of the cost. I don't remember the exact number, but it was less than $1 million. And granted, Fort Bend County is smaller, but you know, again, $11 million to do vaccine outreach. Where? What exactly are they doing? What kind of data is being gathered during this process? I mean, I think commissioners have a right to know what's going on. They're the ones who are accountable to the electorate.
Okay.
The people they hire is going to be shady. I mean, you go to Elevate Strategies website, they're hiring these canvassers for $25 an hour, 29 hours a week. I don't think that information is going to come out as to who they are throughout, unless you do like a public records or open records request or something. And I'm sure a lot of them will have political backgrounds when it comes to it. But I mean,
okay, Chau, you cross over from, hold on, Chau, you cross over from journalism to communications. And so there's an issue here. If you've got these subs, or if you've got a contract of this size, does it surprise you that only 3 or 4 firms actually bid on this? Now, what I'm hearing out in the industry is no one knew this contract of this size demanding this type of service was available, or we would have seen multiple other firms with lots of experience in this arena bidding for it or partnering up and saying, hey, I'll do half, you do half. We've done it before. Why didn't that happen? I think that's a question that needs to be answered.
Look, and I agree with it, Greg, as a former, sitting in your chair in not so distant past. And look, I'm a social worker. We're looking at justice for citizens, right? And ensuring that the community, in this case, vaccine testing and vaccinations are not vaccine test, COVID testing and vaccinations are happening. I'm not disagreeing that some detail needs to go into what's behind this contract. What I'm saying is, our kids are watching, our community's watching. We're adults. Just model good behavior. I'm a social worker. I'm a therapist. And when I see that kind of behavior, and this is how we're teaching kids, this is how a man is supposed to talk to a woman, I take serious exception to that. I absolutely agree.
Distractions.
Do the diligence, figure out what's going on with the contract, but don't go in a public domain for the world to see. And this is your behavior, Commissioner Cagle. I take real exception to that.
I'm sorry, dude. You call me a liar in public. I promise you, it's
on.
I'm gonna have a hard time holding back.
And it's not appropriate. I'm just telling you, it's not appropriate.
So we can disagree civilly.
That leads to more behavior.
Let's switch gears. Let's switch gears to the issue of state funding of border security. The very real fear that's going on down there. Y'all heard that a Goliad County Sheriff. I thought it was extremely compelling. That's why I included it into the show. And then our completely unscientific but significant megaphone poll. 80% says, yeah, we're going to have to spend our own dollars down there. Holly, your thoughts as you saw that conversation, commentary on the commentary.
Well, border issues are certainly very important here in Texas. We're all worried about it. And in Harris County, I think there's a correlation with the rise in crime that we're talking about and concerned about this gang activity. So Texans are rightly concerned about what's coming across that border. I caught it earlier. You guys were talking about the Remain in Mexico policy and what's happening with that. That's just a very tiny piece of what should be a comprehensive border strategy or comprehensive border policy. I think most of us, regardless of our side of the aisle, we are concerned about those who are seriously seeking asylum, but we cannot really measure who's coming across the border when we basically have an open border. And people are just pouring across. We're looking at all of these arrests. The governor has announced the Operation Lone Star, where they're arresting more people. But again, it's a tiny fraction of who's pouring across the border. So, I think we're rightly frustrated that the federal government is not doing their part in enforcing a good border policy. And, I don't know if we'll be able to accomplish much in the state. $1 billion is a lot of money to some of us still in the world, but we'll see.
Do you think there's ever going to be a serious coming together of minds in Congress to reform immigration in this country? We know that George W. Bush tried to do it. There were some efforts by the Obama administration, whether they were sincere or not. But what's going on right now is absolutely broken. And, you know, all 6,000 kids a day or 6,000 people a day, that's enough to build a new 6A high school in Texas every day and fill every slot. That's happening every day. And so, you know, what do we do?
But let me answer your question, Greg. No. Flat out, no.
They're not trying. They're not trying.
We're not trying. We have no interest in trying, simply because your question was whether or not will there be a day that Congress will come together and work on this. There won't be. Not as long as each party can get their base riled up and this preservation of power exists, this partisan politics exists. I mean, think about it. We've been debating the issue of abortion for the last 50 years. Why? Because some people, you know, are hardcore believers in it, and they'll stand out on the street corners and yell. The other 80% are just people who want to tote a partisan bag. And every time a party finds something that they can pull on, I mean, look at where we are, man. We're in a national crisis, and each party has decided to dig their heels in on freaking masks and vaccinations when we should all be working together. So no, Greg, our nation will not come together. We cannot. Here's one thing that I didn't mention earlier, right, about the vaccination. I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma a couple of weeks ago and touring some of the architecture in Tulsa while I was also looking at Black Wall Street. But one of the things that I discovered on the way back was a statue in the park of a young lady with her crutches on the ground and her arms up in the air making the victory sign. And in the inscription, it read, "We defeated polio. As a nation, we came together and we defeated polio." Crutches on the ground, her arms in the air as though she's been liberated from this virus. That's not how we're acting as a nation, right? We're not acting collectively to fight this. We're digging our heels in to try and make sure that we're right and they're wrong, and they're wrong and we're right. And that's the very reason we won't come to an agreement on immigration, because it's more interesting to try and put a party down and keep another party up than it is to try and look at the humanity at the border, across the border, and our responsibility as a nation to do right by ourselves and to do right by others.
Marcus, polio affected children. Do you think that if if COVID affected children inordinately like polio did, that this country would come together? Because right now we're playing Russian roulette with our kids.
Yeah.
I mean, bottom line, my kids are under 11, under 12. They're not vaccinated. You know, we've got quarantines and this and that and stay at home. I mean, it's just, I wonder about that. As a country, we haven't figured out how we can come together. If it was safe for our children, would we? I don't know.
You know, I don't know. That's a great question of whether or not it would change our mind if it was strictly about the children. And I hate to be cruel this way, but you know, those crutches meant a lot, right? If you know, the thing about COVID is you get it, you recover, or you get it and you die, right?
Polio.
But polio, you would see people walking around with these wooden cloth wrapped crutches, right, and limping along and rolling.
My partner's father had polio all of his life.
And you just and that image struck a chord of fear that made us respond and react in a particular way. And that's not what happened. Right now, we're so callous with our partisan politics that we don't care whether people are dying. I just lost my sensei, my MMA trainer, just died last week from COVID.
I read it. To Marcus's point, I think there are some issues, and both sides of the aisle are guilty of this, that they would rather keep an issue alive for political pandering than actually solve the problem. You know, when we talk about the border, we're talking about ensuring the safety of not only the residents who are already here, but those who legitimately want to come here for good reasons, not people who are running drugs or are part of some cartel or gang. But, you know, if we were serious about solving this issue and serious about it, we would be having a process that was orderly. We would be testing people for diseases. We would be checking, you know, to see if they're part of a gang or violent or have some sort of record. We wouldn't have this open border policy, right?
You know, I gotta say this real quickly. I mentioned it during the show. One of the Marines that was killed in Afghanistan, he's from El Cenizo, which is a colonia in South Laredo. A lot of those kids go to LBJ High School. My father was a coach there. And those kids, there's probably a good chance that one or more of his parents were at one point undocumented, but he chose to fight for and lay his life down for this country. We are a country that has been enriched by talents and the hard work of immigrants our entire history. It works if we can make it work. And I just,
the problem.
It worked with the Vietnamese.
It did, and Greg, but I will say what the problem now is. There's some people who don't want people who want to immigrate to America to learn English, to learn the U.S. history and what's the story of what we behind the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. So basically, that's not a good thing. If you come back and you look at immigration earlier in the 20th century, remember the requirements. You couldn't go on welfare. If you were sick, you were turned away and sent on a ship back to Europe. Okay. And if you wanted to become a citizen, you really had to learn what it meant to be an American. And everyone knew to be successful in America, you had to be able to speak English. Understand, not easy, but that's what they needed to do. And those who did that ended up being successful, as Chau and Tony have alluded to. And that can happen again, but there are some that want us to divide our country, and they're in both parties. They want to divide us. They want to keep us separate language, separate culture, separate customs, as opposed to the melting pot.
Let me know who that is so I can give them a call.
I want to make clear, I don't know the background of this young man, but that is a possibility. Tony, go ahead. You've been listening to the conversation.
Well, I mean, if we're also along those same lines, there's the Voces Oral History Project by Dr. Maggie Rivas Rodriguez at the University of Texas, where she's been chronicling the oral histories of the still living Mexican-American World War II veterans. And that's not symbolic or anything. That's my battery. So that would have been like, the next week. I turned my light off when I talk about the World War II. That would have been.
Yeah. Hey, Charles, you've been listening to the conversation. What's been going through your head?
I think Marcus and Holly both made the point that, which is so accurate, that everybody just survives. The political parties thrive off of having these issues continuously be divided. And that's, what primaries are about. That's what general election campaigns are about. I mean, take like Marcus mentioned, the abortion issue. Texas Republicans control the governorship, lieutenant governor, Senate, for a while, most judicial offices, Texas House. They never banned abortion. Why? They claim, you look at every primary Republican mailer, it says that they're the most pro-life person since, God knows who, but yet they've never actually advanced on it. So why is that? It's because they thrive from, and I mean, I'm not saying they're not all, genuine. Some of them are, but they thrive from having the issue be a divided issue, and then they can fundraise and pander to their base. And so, yeah, I think that's why the immigration issue is, and particularly now that everything is kind of sucked into this political vortex where we're just like, you can't even say hello to someone without it turning into, like I said last week, I saw on Twitter, someone said they got vaccinated and they were outdoors, but they were going to wear a mask anyway, so they didn't look like a Republican. Well, everything is political now that.
No, I mean, it's crazy.
Hey, full disclosure, this program
we were walking around and you could identify somebody by party, based on whether or not they were wearing a mask or not. And
this program has what?
Probably 80%
right. You said, is that what you said, Greg?
This program thrives on the fact that there's division.
Yeah,
and different sides. I want to go to something perhaps on my part.
I want to go something that I heard Gary say. When he talked about immigrants and learning what it's like to be American. I just want to point out that I don't think Americans know what it's like to be American, right? I just don't.
Yeah, we don't teach it anymore.
I can tell you as an immigrant.
I'm talking about,
Tony,
we can say we don't teach it anymore.
American.
We don't socialize it anymore. But the reality of it is, the America that you're talking about, Gary, when the war started, when there was a threat against this nation, and the president issued an order, and Congress issued an order that you must, if you're 18 years or older and you're able-bodied, then you must go and defend this nation. That was the premise of what being American is about. Here we have this threat in America, which is a virus that is mutating, that is spreading, and we don't know how to come together to fight it. I don't think we know what it means to be American anymore. And part of it has to do with how broad it is, but also part of it has to do with the fact that it was just entrenched in, one particular group, race of people, and one particular thing.
There are some very nuanced arguments against taking the vaccine. It's not just, I'm not going to be told. I mean, I did a piece, I talked to 3 mothers. One was a healthcare professional, one was nursing, one had a child with a chromosomal abnormality. They all had very different reasons. And the nurse actually had taken the vaccine, but was not comfortable giving it to her school-age kids. I mean, it's different. Holly, have you heard different arguments out there?
Yes, I've heard a ton of arguments. I've interviewed some of the individuals who are suing Methodist Hospital over this issue and some of those who are supporting them. And I would say, to your point, Marcus, that, part of the reason people are skeptical is because the narrative on this has changed repeatedly over the past year and a half. I guess not quite a year and a half, but, first it's, masks don't work, then it's, oh, masks work, then it's 2 masks, 3 masks, and then it's, oh my gosh, this vaccine is terrible when Trump is the one pushing it. But then once Trump is out of office, then, you're terrible if you don't get the vaccine. People are confused. And honestly, even as a journalist, sometimes I'm confused. I don't know which authority to believe, because we have different people saying different things in very high levels of government and within the medical profession as well. And, I've talked to some doctors. I talked to one doctor who's, got patents for treatments that he's developed. And he said, I'm not against vaccines. I've gotten all the vaccines. All my children have gotten every vaccine. He said, this one is different. He said, I don't recommend that everyone get it. I think it's okay for some people, but there are some concerns. Some people have health issues. There's a big concern for younger males with the inflammation of the heart and things that could be a side effect. And so, we're still at the point where people are unsure, and there's still more data to be collected on this vaccine as to whether or not, it's really best for everyone. One doctor I talked to said no one under the age of 55 who is healthy should get the vaccine, but anyone above that age or anyone with a comorbidity, yes, they should. So,
and Holly, I agree with some of those points, and I do. I'm constantly on chats with my doctor friends when I read or see intelligent arguments about the vaccine. I just read one from a PhD and her position on it, and I thought it was great. So I sent it to the folks that have medical degrees or PhDs in science to tell me where the holes are in this objectively, not biased, right? Just give me the hardcore truth. But I'm gonna go back to my argument before, right? When we had, and tying this to Garrett, when Vietnam happened, right? You had folks who says that I don't believe this is good for me. I don't believe this is good for my nation, and I'm not going to fight this war. And those people were labeled un-American. The folks who lined up and went and fought, they were celebrated as heroes. And we fought even in Iraq. We went to war in Iraq under the cloak that this is good for America, and it was completely a debacle. It was a sham from the get-go. But we don't look at those things the same way. Those things have to be included when we're talking about how we rally behind one cause for the good of America, even if it's not that good or we don't know whether or not it's good. And then in this one, we're saying, I think it's because it's a virus and we don't see it as an imminent threat, which it is, we react differently. Now, to the people who I agree that there are people who have varied responses as to why they're not taking the vaccine, but I would venture to say, I know people who haven't had the vaccine for particular reasons, health reasons, but they're being safe. They're being cautious. They're not out here passing and spreading or threatening to catch. And I think there's a difference between the person who says, I am not going to get vaccinated, but I'm also going to wear my mask. I'm also going to not be in congregations. I'm also not going to do this to risk my health or someone else's health. I think that's a completely different person than someone who says, oh man, I don't know what's in that vaccine, but I'm going out to the club to smoke hookah tonight.
Or the ones who take the dewormer. What is that about?
Oh, hey, everybody. Val's got to go make breakfast for 5 girls.
I can hear them.
Gary's going to go check in with his
Hey, Chau, don't go make breakfast. Just bring them here. We've already made it.
I can't hold
breakfast is already cooked. Don't be like Gary. Don't be like Gary. Don't drive past.
Is Marcus providing breakfast for all of us?
I'm providing breakfast for all of Houston this morning. Yes, I am.
As long as you
Tony's
pay.
not drinking cerveza. He's got to enjoy it breakfast now.
Exactly.
Yeah, you got to give us a VIP line. Exactly. Yeah, Marcus. There needs to be a VIP line, and then we'll come.
Hey, everybody, what a great conversation. Yeah. I appreciate all of you. Okay, everybody who wants Holly to come back, raise a hand.
Here.
All right.
Majority rules. Well, that's everybody. I guess it's a unanimous decision.
Oh, wait. Is she Republican or Democrat?
Don't worry about it.
He's a journalist.
Journalist.